Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring today's Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
One of my friend Noah's best friends, he was also a shark attack victim. His name is Mike Coots. He lost his leg below the knee, and he was the first person in the hospital besides our immediate family to talk to Bethany. And he just really gave her the hope that you can do this. You know, I'm surfing again, loss of my limb, and it's totally attainable. You can do it. And she just had this glimmer of hope.
That's our guest, Tom Hamilton. Tom has 3 children, one of whom, Bethany, was a champion surfer who lost an arm in a shark attack. But that didn't stop Bethany. She still surfs. She's had her story told in books and movies. She helps others. And her dad, Tom, is our guest on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello to David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's listen to this inspiring conversation between Tom Hamilton and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Tom Hamilton of Princeville, Hawaii, who's the father of 3, a Vietnam veteran, an accomplished surfer, retired waiter, and more recently, a grandfather. Tom, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
Thank you for having me.
You and your wife, Sherry, have been married for 41 years and are the proud parents of 3, Noah, 39, Tim, 35, and Bethany, 31, who survived a shark attack at age 13. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
I grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey, coastal town. Actually was founded by the Methodists way back in the day. You couldn't even drive a car in there. You had to walk or take a carriage. It's still a dry town to this day. They've never allowed liquor or restaurants to serve liquor. So, but it was a really nice community. Everybody knew each other, but it would go from maybe 60,000 people to over 200,000 in the summer because it was a destination for tourists.
Got it. So when I recall, you're the youngest of 4 children.
Yes.
What was it like growing up as the baby in the family?
Actually, my oldest brother and sister, I'm sure they were really, really good to me, but I wasn't that close to them growing up because of the age spread. But my second youngest brother, Mike, we spent a lot of time together. He had other interests than me, but we still had good quality time as brothers. Yeah.
Excellent. Out of curiosity, what did your dad do for a living?
My dad was a dentist, and he specialized in oral surgery, but he did all types of dentistry.
Okay. How would you characterize your relationship with your dad?
Overall, it was very good. He worked a lot and didn't have a whole lot of time off. I think, nowadays, and you could probably attest to this, we try to spend more time with our kids than back in the day when we were younger. But I got to say, my dad was always loving, supportive, and he was a Little League baseball coach for me for a time. So that was really neat to have that relationship with him.
Was he an athletic person himself?
Yeah, my dad was very athletic. He was a really good swimmer. His passion was tennis. Even in his later years, he played in like super seniors tennis tournaments in the area and stuff. So that was like his go-to sport.
So I'm thinking about takeaways. as it relates to relationship with your dad, were there any important lessons or stories that come to mind that embellish your relationship with your dad?
Well, one of the greatest things he ever did for me was bought me my first surfboard in a local hardware store. And there actually was a surf shop in town, but he went in, he never would, he always went in the hardware store and he saw some surfboards. He bought me one. Boy, I think it was for my 12th or 13th birthday. As a result of that, I really got into surfing, and with one of my best friends, his name was Monk, and we each help each other carry these big, heavy boards to the beach. Later on, as years passed, my dad told me a funny joke that he said it was the worst mistake he ever made because it resulted in me, after getting out of high school, going on my first surf trip to California, which I extended, and then eventually ended up where I live here in Hawaii because of my passion for surfing and him buying me that first surfboard.
If I can paraphrase what you've said, sort of reflected on that being a mistake because it incentivized you to leave, right? To leave.
Yeah. I'm the only of 4 children that have left New Jersey. Well, actually, my older brother lives in Delaware. That's close by, though. But I'm the only one. I was kind of the black sheep of the family that actually moved on and permanently moved on. So,
well, at least the suntan sheep of the family, if not black sheep of the family, living in Hawaii.
Yeah. And most of my family enjoys coming and visiting me now in Hawaii. It's not a bad place to come visit, especially this time of year.
So from what I remember, you went from New Jersey out to California. And was it school that you were interested in going to, or was it surfing that brought you to California initially?
I cannot lie. It was surfing. But I was interested in going to school because I could get the GI Bill and have a little bit of income from that. And my parents and I did want to go to college too. So I ended up going to a junior college in San Diego. It's called Mesa College. I did pretty well. And then when I moved to Hawaii, I ended up transferring to the University of Hawaii Junior College on Kauai, where I live right now.
You jumped over something important, though. You mentioned the GI Bill, but you didn't mention surfing. And I'm wondering what were the course of events that took you from initially surfing in California to Hawaii eventually?
Well, when I was California, I was only going to go for 2 weeks. I ended up going for a month. And then when I came back, my father handed me a physical notice to get drafted. And the Vietnam War was raging at the time. So I had to go to Philadelphia. Of course, I passed. And then they gave me, I think they gave you 60 days to either join which service you wanted to join, or they would put you where they needed you the most. So in high school, my swim coach, I swam varsity swimming. He was a retired Navy commander, and he was in the reserves. So he got me into the Navy. Then eventually ended up in San Diego on a ship heading to Vietnam. It actually all happened really quick.
And what was it that drew you to Hawaii?
Well, basically, when we left San Diego, we pulled into Pearl Harbor to refuel and replenish. And I just saw the beauty of the Hawaiian Islands, and I always knew it had some of the best surf in the world. And during the course of my time on that ship, my best friend turned out to be a Hawaiian guy, and he didn't surf. He was a very good body surfer. But he always would tease me because he saw me getting Surfer magazine in the mail. You need to come to Hawaii and ride some real waves, because he couldn't believe New Jersey had good waves, which it actually does. People from California fly to New Jersey to surf swells these days, which is hard to believe, but they do. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And from a career standpoint, I know that you've done some construction work, and I think you mentioned to me that you'd retired after 24 years of being a fine dining waiter at the Princeville Hotel there in Kauai.
Right.
But it was the surfing that really was what drew you to Hawaii. And if I recall, it's how you met Sherry as well.
Yeah, I met Sherry actually out surfing. I saw her around, but saw her more out surfing. Yeah, she used to drop in on me and ride in front of me, and it wasn't a bad view riding behind her. So that's how we kind of got to know each other.
My recollection was she was a pretty accomplished surfer herself.
Yeah, she was very, very good surfer. I'd say in the top 4 of women on the island at the time. She was a standout for sure.
Well, let's talk about special needs first on a personal level and then beyond. I'm sort of curious to know, before the shark attack that Bethany experienced in 2003, did you or Sherry have any experience with the special needs community?
No, I can't say we did. Not at all.
Well, many people know the story because it's been a well-told story. I'm wondering, how did it transpire from your perspective?
Well, I was actually in the hospital being prepped for orthoscopic knee surgery. And the doctor, his name's Dr. Ravinsky, we knew each other from surfing. He was a very good orthopedic, but he also was a surfer, and he did a lot of free diving too. He said, "Hey, do you want to go to sleep, or do you want to get a spinal tap and watch your surgery on the TV monitor?" I said, "Well, maybe I'll try that." So they did a spinal tap, which I'll never do again, because it was like getting electrocuted. They had a difficult time tapping me, and I was like levitating off the bed until they finally got it. And then I finally got numbed up, and they prepped me. The nurses were there. The anesthesiologist had already left, and the door slammed open, and it was a emergency room doctor. And he said, "Dr. Dave, we need this operating room. There's a shark attack victim arriving." And I looked at this guy, and I just said, "Do you know who it is?" And he says, "Oh, we know it's a young girl from the North Shore." And then Dr. Dave said, "Tom, let me go see what's happening." He came back in the operating room, and he had tears dripping off his chin. Proceeded to tell me it was Bethany. And he says, "Tom, we got to roll you out of here. She's taking your place." So I actually had to go in the recovery room. I couldn't get up and walk because I was numb from being tapped out by the spinal tap. And believe it or not, nobody told me or let me know that her arm was missing until I actually was able to walk into her recovery room and look down and see her for the first time. And she was white as a ghost, like a sheet of paper from loss of blood. And it blew my mind that her arm was gone. And that's kind of where it all began, right there. I was traumatized beyond belief, because it's every surfer's worst nightmare to get attacked by a shark. But not all people who get attacked by sharks lose limbs. You can get, some stitches and stuff and survive fine. And that her just being so young and having such she was just incredibly naturally talented athlete, and people were already talking about her being a pro surfer and eventually becoming a world champion. That was kind of where she was heading, and all of a sudden that all just got cut off. She's accomplished so much since then. It's only God could get the glory for that.
So you mentioned that your first reaction was just being overwhelmed with the situation because nobody had sort of cued you in while you were recovering from the, not surgery, but being prepped for the surgery that you were anticipating having.
Right.
What were the fears that you and Sherry had early on, that first couple of days, the first couple of weeks?
We just didn't know what to do. We just saw her future and our futures like totally annihilated. Never knew if she'd ever want to go back in the ocean. Sherry was even talking about going to Mammoth because she worked there before she moved to Hawaii, which is a ski resort in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
But, after a while, her brothers, who were totally traumatized through it all too, just kept loving on her. And one of my friend Noah's best friends, he was also a shark attack victim. His name was Mike Coots. He lost his leg below the knee. And he was the first person in the hospital, besides our immediate family, to talk to Bethany, which was miraculous because he flew in for a friend's wedding. And he just really gave her the hope that you can do this. You know, I'm surfing again and bodyboarding with loss of my limb. And then he told her, I tried paddling with one arm today and it's totally attainable. You can do it. And she just had this glimmer of hope. And she heard it from someone else besides her immediate family. And I think that was just all set up by God, because he was going to school in California. He came back for a wedding.
It does sound like divine intervention, right? That
Right, yeah.
this Mike Coots happened to be there and, was able to share with her from his own personal experience, not like a loving parent saying, hey, honey, things are going to be okay. Be patient. There's proof, right? Literally in front of her, right? You don't have to have blind faith, but it just somebody there that, is documenting the fact that, it's possible, right? It's not a for sure thing, but it's possible.
Yeah. And him and my son Noah were good friends. They used to ride the bus together to go to school. And of course, Noah got a hold of him, not knowing he arrived that day. Our plans had all just got shattered, but we also had a hope. And my wife Sherry was just so happy that she was alive and she survived. And I was as angry as I've ever been at God that it happened. So it was like two different, and that's just normal. Everybody has different feelings on what happened and why it happened, how come it happened, why me, why her, there was just a lot of struggles for me as a dad,
So going back to Bethany's situation, when you look back on it, because my recollection was she got into the water very quickly, like a month or so after. Was there a turning point? Not for you. You just described your own turning point. But was there a turning point for Bethany, or maybe a couple of turning points for her, as far as how she dealt with the trauma and all the uncertainty that was going on as a adolescent, right? I mean, she's super young. She's only 13 years old.
Right.
What was it that helped her overcome? Were there some turning points?
Yeah, just getting back in the ocean for the first time. And she rode a longboard and she struggled like getting up. And finally I said, hey, you got to put your hand on the stringer. There's a stringer that goes down the middle of the board, because she was pushing up on the side and it was tipping the board and she was losing momentum. But finally she figured it out. When she got her first wave and rode it to the beach, there was a lot of people there. It just happened to be one of those days, and a lot of the best surfers on Quaid at this particular spot. And everybody just started hooting and hollering, and it was like major, and she had tears. But she broke through the barrier right then. And then within a short time, I'd say less than a month, she was going surfing every day, figuring out how to paddle with one arm and stay straight. And she was doing one arm push-ups in our living room, doing everything she could mentally and physically to overcome, I wouldn't call it a disability, because she gives anybody that says she's disabled a stink eye, they call it in Hawaii. She just doesn't believe she's handicapped or disabled. And that's why she's doing what she's doing, because her mind's that strong. I mean, she struggled somewhat with how she looked, but her happy place was in the ocean. When she got back in the ocean, God just healed her. I think a whole lot of things, doubt, the thought of how am I ever going to accomplish what I was pursuing again? And she did.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of curious to know what impact Bethany's situations had on her older brothers, Noah and Tim, your marriage, or your extended family for that matter.
Oh, well, her brothers were her biggest fans, and they see, Bethany had a God-given gift as an athlete. I'm not being too weird to say that Michael Jordan had that gift. Tiger Woods had that gift. Tom Brady has that gift. And you could see that she had a special gift that most people didn't have. And she was always self-motivated. Like, she trained without dad or mom telling her what to do. She just knew in her heart and soul what she had to do to get to the level she wanted to get to. And she did have a local surf coach that let her on the team. This was before the accident. He's from Australia, and he's coached world champions. And he said that there was no doubt in his mind that Bethany was going to reach the level of a professional surfer and most likely become a world champion during her time. And then when everybody saw what she was doing, within like a couple months, she wanted to go compete again. We were surfing this spot that you could get out through the reef real easy. And I was really traumatized by watching her. She couldn't paddle out through the whitewater. The board would flip out. God gave me a vision that she needed a handle. Real crudely made some handles for her boards. And she could control her board without the board flying away, or she's walking through the shallow water. She could hold on to the board with a handle. Anyway, make a long story short, I've done a couple hundred handles since that day. And I've sent handles all over the world for one-arm surfers. Not just other surfers that lost their limb to a shark attack, but some through cancers, some through electrocutions, some through car accidents. But they contact her foundation and say, hey, is there any way I could get a couple handle setups so I can do what Bethany's doing? I've sent them to South Africa, Australia, Florida, all over the world. And I've had people say, why don't you patent that? I go, no, I'm not going to patent it. I'm doing it out of love. I want to see whoever gets this to overcome the struggle that I know they're struggling with. It's like a blessing for me to send out these setups,
Is it called something, Tom? Do they call the handle something?
We just call it the handle. I don't know. Both her brothers were struggling really hard to see what she was dealing with, but so supportive, the best brothers you could have, but not to the point where they're trying to help her do everything, because she didn't want much help. She just wanted to be able to overcome the challenges on her own, but they were right there, especially during her early comebacks sessions of surfing and stuff, doing whatever they could to help her,
So let's talk about the Beyond experience. One of the early things Bethany was involved with is writing a book titled Soul Surfer, A True Story of Faith, Family, and Fighting to Get Back on the Board, which my recollection came out in 2004, just a year or so after the shark attack. And it seemed like that helped catalyze things for her. How would you describe the impact writing the book and then the reception of the book had for her?
We weren't sure we wanted to write a book, but then the more we thought about it, we thought it could be really good to help other people who are struggling with whatever they're struggling with. And actually, a pastor on Quaid was the co-writer of the book. He's a good friend. He's written a lot of books. It was a Simon Schuster book, and it made the bestseller list back then on the New York Times and the LA Times. And its claim to fame is it knocked Donald Trump's book off the bestsellers list when it came out.
I love it.
I don't want to get political, but I remember that happening. I didn't even know who Donald Trump was. But as a result of that book and doing so well, then we were approached to make the movie Soul Surfer, which I think turned out really well. In the end, there was quite a bit of her faith and mention of God and everything, and we were basically pretty darn happy with the movie.
Well, as long as we're talking about the movie, and there are quite a few other books I'm just going to make reference to some of the other books. So if we don't come back, Rise Above, a 90-day devotional, Body and Soul, A Girl's Guide to Fit, Fun, and a Fabulous Life, Be Unstoppable, The Art of Never Giving Up, Devotions for the Soul Surfer. Those are some of the other books that Bethany's name is associated with.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed with her productivity, that she's had this interest in putting her thoughts in writing and sharing it to inspire others, not only young girls, but well beyond, to overcome some of the challenges they have in their life. But switching over to the movie, which I understood came out about 6 or 7 years after the book, the movie Soul Surfer, you were played by Dennis Quaid, and Sherry was played by Helen Hunt, if I remember.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know why terrible things happen to us sometimes, but I have to believe that something good is going to come out of this.
What's all this stuff?
A little fan mail. We sorted it out by country.
There's an 8th grader from North Carolina who lost his arm. He's going to try out for his school soccer team because of me, and he's rooting for me in my next competition. Hey, Dad. I need your help.
It's not going to be easy.
I don't need easy. I just need possible.
The greatest surfers, they know when the best waves are coming. You feel it. You have that gift too.
What were your thoughts at the time? Did it seem like a surreal experience, or what was that like?
It was somewhat surreal. We got to become very good friends with Dennis. He was great. They let me actually pick him to play me. There was like 3 or 4 male actors that they were looking at. Kurt Russell's one, Dennis Quaid. I looked at some of Dennis's movies, and he had a lot of movies where he was a father. You know, they were family type movies, and I just liked his temperament, and I just thought, man, this guy. If I was going to have anybody play me, I want Dennis Quaid, and they honored my request. I think he was pretty much in the top 2 at that point anyway.
So the more recent movie, Bethany Hamilton Unstoppable, which came out in 2018, is more of a documentary. What was that experience like?
You know, we were just really totally 100% behind that because it was a true story, and it was what she wanted to tell. You know, it took 4.5 years from start to finish on that because she got pregnant in the middle of it and had to have a baby. But yeah, it was the guy who was the director and producer and filmer. His name's Lieber. He did an incredible job. You know, people were amazed at her surfing in that and her level of commitment and training. She trained so hard and worked out so hard to get in tip-top shape for that. So her husband's an incredible guy too, Adam.
It happened so fast there wasn't much time to think. The shark had just taken my arm.
You know, we didn't hear anything. Or all of a sudden, Bethany just goes, I got attacked by a shark. And she started paddling in towards us.
I looked down and saw that my whole arm was gone, and I don't know, it just kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, when we were paddling in, I didn't think she was going to make it.
Right before we were heading to the hospital, one of the paramedics came up to me and he whispered, "God will never leave you nor forsake you," in my ear.
Well, let's talk a bit about the foundation, formerly known as the Friends of Bethany Foundation, but now renamed as the Beautifully Flawed Foundation. It's been in existence for quite a few years, and from what I remember, there are 4 different programs, if I can call them that: Beautifully Flawed, Shine Forth, Anchored in Love, and The Forge. And I'm wondering if we could spend a moment just talking about each to share with our listeners what each of these components is about.
Sure. Well, Beautifully Flawed, I think they've been doing it close to 11 or 12 years now. It's to reach out to young girls predominantly and to be accepted into it's a retreat. You have to be missing a limb. The foundation members and the board, and they read through a whole lot of applications, and it's hard. They got to whittle it down to like 16 girls because it's all they can handle at one time. But every one of those girls comes to, they rent a house, and the Scripps Institute actually donates a house right next door so they can all be real close by. Girls, a lot of those girls come in there and they're totally like, they have real low self-esteem. They're made fun of by other girls in school because they're missing a leg or missing an arm or missing a hand and an arm. But between Bethany and my daughter-in-law, Becky, and Sarah Hill, and they bring in some really neat motivational speakers. And Bethany's a very good motivational speaker, by the way. These girls, after 4 days, they leave totally changed. They put so much love into these girls, and they give them a surf day. They get them all up surfing. If they can't get up on their own, one of the surfers will, ride tandem, like 2 on a board. But most of the girls actually get up on their own and ride a wave to the beach, and it's just the smiles and the laughter and the hoots and the hollers, and it just does so much for their soul and their spirit. They leave there like built up, and they're strong instead of weak, and they're ready to face the challenges of life with a whole new image. I don't know. It's an incredible event.
Yeah, well, it sounds like these are sort of peer-to-peer as well as transformative experiences. They're not looking at themselves the same way, and what I might refer to as sort of a deficit model, right? That I'm less than, and they're realizing that, hey, I just have to find a new way to do things, and they're seeing all these role models. They realize that they're not alone. While they might be alone in their own community or alone, in their small friend group, they realize that there's other people like themselves that have been able to overcome and figure out what does it take to lead the life I want to live. So I think these are just amazing programs, Beautifully Flawed, and then the Forge. So what are the Shine Forth and the Anchored in Love programs about?
Both of those programs piggyback off Beautifully Flawed. And they have, I think, one night before Beautifully Flawed starts, I think it's Anchored in Love, and they usually do it at a big church. And Bethany gets up and just encourages the kids and the girls, and then they have, other women who are really talented in different expertises, speaking God's love into their hearts and overcoming whatever they're struggling with. Teenage girls, they're all going through something. And Shine Forth is similar to that. They do that at the end of the Beautifully Flawed. So all 3 of those events are run back to back to back, and they've been very, very successful. I don't know. A lot of God's love throughout everything that Bethenys Foundation does. It's just all about encouraging and helping people overcome minor things and major things and everything in between.
Yeah, well, I admire her for not only the accomplishments that she's had in overcoming her own challenges, but for having the heart to reach out to others, right? Inspire others. And I would refer to it as sort of a calling, right? It's given her purpose, right? It's one thing to be able to surf and have these accomplishments personally, but it's another thing to use the gifts you've been given and make an impact in other people's lives in such a profound way.
Yeah, she still gets lots of fan mail. I mean, after the first year or so, after her attack, she was getting like stacks and stacks of letters every month. But yeah, she still gets fan mail to this day. I go down to our P.O. box and she'll have 3 or 4 almost every day from somewhere in the country. Young girls mostly.
So I'm thinking about advice now, and I'm wondering if there's any important takeaways you can share with a dad who might be raising a child with a physical or an intellectual disability, for that matter.
Yeah, I've had opportunity to talk to some dads and don't always have the answers, but I always just encourage them to just don't give up. Spend that time you need with your daughter or your son to help them, attain as normal a life as they can. She does this organization, Make-A-Wish, almost every year, and she does a surf camp, and sometimes there's like 6 families come in, and one of the children is pretty much terminal or could be terminal. And there's such an incredible organization. They fly the whole family unit in, give them a van, give them a stipend for buying stuff. They put them up. And the thing that Make-A-Wish does is they include the whole family, not just the ill kid, We just see how not only does the wish child get their wish, they get to go surfing with Bethany or just spend time with her under a coconut tree, where she can talk to them and encourage them and lift them up and help them through stuff that maybe mom and dad can't help them through. But all the other children also, benefit, because they bring them in as a whole unit. I mean, we've had one family with 8 kids come and a mom and dad. It's a family of 10,
Wow.
Normally it's at least 2 or 3 plus mom and dad. And these kids have cystic fibrosis, they have cancers, they have gnarly diseases that they're, in and out of the hospital. And it's such a burden on the parents. So my wife and I have time to take a walk on the beach with dad, and Sherry can walk with mom, and just give them as much advice and help and support as we can. And I've done that on the phone with quite a few parents, especially dads. It tends to be me with the dad and my wife working with the mom. And it's so fulfilling just to help them hear something from somebody who's gone through something similar, but maybe totally different, but still something that you struggle with, and try to help them overcome, or at least lift them to the point where they have more belief in what they're doing is helping.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. I'm sort of curious to know, why is it you've agreed to be a mentor father as part of the Special Fathers Network?
I don't know. I'm thrilled to be a father, and I'm even more thrilled to be a grandfather. And yeah, I just appreciate what you're doing, your organization. And I think it's something that's really needed. From everything I've watched about 3 or 4 of your podcasts, and they're all super encouraging, and they're all very different. I think the spectrum that you're reaching is so broad. It's great. And it's really something that I think God's has his hand on. And I think you guys especially you, are doing a work that is really necessary and much needed, especially in the chaotic world we're living on right now,
Tom, thank you for taking the time and many insights. As a reminder, Tom is just one of the dads who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father, or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Tom, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.